Today we're going to talk about how to get your FTP, or functional threshold power. And there are at least 5 ways that you can estimate your FTP. A 20-minute test, 2 8-minute tests, the ramp test, or 2 6-minute tests. The optimal way to do this test is very hard, as it would be your output over the course of an hour. Because that would take an enormous amount of preparation, most athletes use one of these methods just mentioned, and not very many people use the hour method. Functional threshold power is really how many watts you can sustain over the course of an hour. Think of it as a time trial. A time trial is all out, giving everything you have to put down the fastest time. Now, before we dig into how to do these, let's talk about why you need to do these tests and what you should be measuring during the test. In order to train properly, as being in the correct zones, you need to have a baseline in order to figure out these zones. Zones are different based on intensity, from a recovery zone all the way up to what I call the synapse interval zone. By doing an FTP test, you will be able to use a little math to figure out what your zone ranges are. So what are we measuring? Ideally, you want to measure your heart rate and power. Power being the more important measurement for training. Power is measured in watts, and it gives you an instant readout on where you are in all of your rides. Heart rate can be used, but it lags, and you will more than likely be starting out way too hard in order to get your heart rate to where it needs to be, and then backing off when it goes too high. Heart rate can also be affected by training load. Sometimes it can hang out too low or too high, which will have you in the wrong training zone. Heart rate is good to have so that when you are training with power, you can look at your baseline FTP heart rate and see or possibly predict when you might need to take a little rest off the bike so your body can recover. Bottom line is that it's important to measure both power and heart rate during your FTP test. Let's talk now about a few of the different test options mentioned earlier. The first and most common is the 20-minute test. I would recommend this test for the expert and elite cyclist, mostly road and gravel racers, as they keep the power down constantly during their events. The 2 8-minute effort test would be suited for athletes that may be more explosive, like cyclocross and mountain bikers. This test would be a better representation of what is happening in their race and for how they will be training. The ramp test is just as it sounds. After a warm-up, the power increases every minute until failure. This may be the least painful test of the group, since it's only hard for the last few minutes, but it's still effective. We can also do 2 6-minute efforts. I use these tests with my beginner and sport athletes in all disciplines of cycling. I can still get good all-out effort numbers with this type of test, and I don't scare the athletes away at the same time. I've seen great improvement with this level of athlete using this form of testing for all the skeptics out there. Again, the hour test will give you a very accurate number, but pushing yourself for an hour around threshold can definitely take its toll, and just the thought of it may have you skipping it altogether. What should you do before the test? The first thing you should do before testing is have a few days off, maybe 2 to 3 days, or very low intensity riding before the test in order to get a good result. You also should not be on the bike for a ton of hours prior to the test. You want your body to be rested and ready, just as you would for the big race. You also don't want to take too much time off. If you do, you start deconditioning. Make sure you hydrate and eat properly the day before and day of the test. Again, treat this test like an A race. So test day has arrived. Hopefully you've prepared for it like you would that race. You're going to have to give everything you have. You're going to leave your body with nothing left. Before you start the test, I would recommend doing some dynamic movements as shown in the previous How to Cycle Fast video. I'll have a link in the description to that video. Once you jump on the bike, you'll need to do around a 20-minute warm-up, give or take some minutes, depending on who you are, because you want to get more muscle fibers recruited and blood moving further throughout the body to help prevent injury. During that warm-up, you will want to include 2 to 3 above threshold efforts for 30 to 90 seconds. This will ensure that more muscle fibers are recruited and ready for that hard effort. I usually will do a 30 to 45 second effort around 7 minutes of that warm-up, and then another 45 to 60 second effort around 10 minutes, and then a final effort around 13 minutes. After that, I pedal to make sure the legs are ready to go, and I also give them a shake or two out here and there. Once it's time to go, it's time to give it everything you have. If this is your first time testing, don't push too hard. You don't want to go all out at the start. If you feel all right after a few minutes into it, then you can start to push harder and harder. You will want to think of this test as one of the hardest things you will do. If you do it properly, you will completely bury yourself. As a side note, make sure you are recording your power and your heart rate. You don't want to put yourself through all this pain only to realize you did not record anything. After you finish the FTP test, you should pedal for recovery for 15 to 30 minutes. Get a recovery shake in. I'll have a link to the shake that I use in the description. You'll want to roll and massage out your legs and then get a good stretch in. I have another video on the post-workout stretching that I'll also put in the description. Once you have your test results, use the average of your power output and heart rate, then insert into the math equations. This will map out your ranges for your particular zones. If you don't know where to go from here, in a future video we will go over how to do this and look at a common zone lineup as well as the lineup that I use. We will talk more in depth about the different zones in another video. Hopefully by watching, you may learn something that can change everything for you. And that is why I'm doing this series. I am hopeful that racing will resume so I can get some new race videos out there. Let me know in the comments below what you struggle with, what questions you may have, and we'll see about putting a video together if there's enough feedback on certain topics. Feel free to share these videos with people who may benefit from them, and let me know in the comments below how often you do an FTP test. Don't forget to share this with your workout friends so they can incorporate testing into their cycling life to get faster. I'll have a link in the description to coaching services, cool bike books that I read, and a link to the GoPro that I use. If you like bikes and like going fast on your bike, help support the channel and grab some bike stickers. I put them on my vehicles. Stay tuned for the next How to Cycle Fast video. Don't miss it by subscribing and clicking the bell so you get notified when it comes out. Watch one of these How to Cycle Fast videos just by clicking on them.